Call the regular meeting to order. January 9th, 2025, Dixon County Commission meeting order. Please remove your hats and stand for flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the agenda with the addition of the reschedule the 16th January meeting to the 14th at 9:30 work session and regular meeting at 11 o'clock.
Second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carried. Minutes of the January 2nd meeting, 2025, expenditures of $85,292.08 prior year. Current year, $688,487.97. Current year, in defense, $17,400. SD security wire, $3,762, no cents. Abatements of $91. Added tax of $8,894.40.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carried. Commission comments and committee reports. Commissioner Roller.
I think I'd like to comment on the work that the staff here at the county has done and why we're trying to work so hard to keep them. I think you heard some testimony today that how important our people are. And we've been working on a project here for about 2 years to make sure that we can keep these folks here working for the county, and we appreciate your support. Thanks.
Thank you, Ron. Commissioner Peterson.
I know this item has been covered, but a tremendous thank you for those that were involved with the snow removal and reaching out to people, and it was a terrific challenge, and I think Dixon County met the challenge as well or better than beyond expectation. And you know, hopefully it's kind of a one-time event and we aren't going to have to go through a repeat of that this winter or winters to come. About the only good thing that came out of some of that, I was able to stay home and read a couple of books, Confronting the President by Bill O'Reilly, and Countdown to 1960 about John Kennedy. And so it was good to catch up on reading, but knowing that others were out there suffering and all the things going on, it's just hard to deal with. Central Kansas Mental Health, I do serve on that particular board, and we have a meeting coming up. And last week we also had a special meeting, and that's over at Saline County, but it's in cooperation with our county, and other counties are involved. And the other thing I would want to mention, it's really been a great honor to serve alongside with Craig. And I know this is his last meeting, but his insights and expertise, I've learned a lot from it, and I have a great appreciation for him. And also, Jeannie, I know this is your last meeting as an elected official. So thank you for all of your work and the things that you've done. I know elections are, there's a lot to deal with compared to maybe what it was years ago or decades ago. And so thank you for your work. That's all I have.
Thank you. Our work session this morning, our representatives Bloom and Hill representing the county were here today, and we had a department head meeting. Moving on, presentation of vacation proclamations. Evac, are you? Thank you. Want to come up and make a presentation, please?
You have a copy? I have copies of both of them. Jamie Shaw, EVAC, Parent Child Advocate.
You might explain what DVAC stands for.
DVAC is Domestic Violence Association of Central Kansas. We deal with domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, elder abuse, stalking, and teen dating violence. And we cover Dickinson County, Swain County, Ellsworth, all the way up north, Concordia, everything. So I have two proclamations today. The first one is National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Proclamation. Whereas millions of men, women, and children are victims of human trafficking, which is the second largest and fastest growing criminal industry in the world. Whereas human trafficking denies victims basic human dignity and freedom and is based on recruiting, harboring, and transporting people through the use of force, fraud, and/or coercion for the purpose of sexual exploitation or forced labor. It is a crime that can take many forms and tear at our society or social fabric, debase our common humanity, and violate what we stand for as a country. Whereas traffickers frequently target victims and then use violence, threats, lies, false promises, debt, bondage, or other forms of control and manipulation to force victims to work against their will or to keep victims involved in commercial sexual exploitation. Whereas the U.S. Justice Department has identified Kansas as an originating state for human trafficking, and most trafficking in Kansas involves local children. Whereas with improved victim identification, medical and social services, training for first responders, and increased public awareness, the victims who have suffered this cruel crime can overcome the bonds of modern slavery, receive protection and justice, and successfully reclaim their rightful independence. And whereas the Domestic Violence Association of Central Kansas is joining forces with victim service providers, criminal justice officials, and concerned citizens throughout Central Kansas and the United States to observe National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. Together, we commit to a society where our sense of justice tells us that united, we can eradicate this wrong and continue to fight for human dignity and rights of every person. Now, therefore, the Dickinson County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaims January 2025 as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month and applauds the efforts of many victim service providers, police officers, prosecutors, national and community organizations, and private sector supporters for their efforts in opposing human trafficking in all its forms.
Any questions?
The second one is National Stalking Awareness Month. Whereas stalking is intentional harassment, a pattern of behavior directed at a specific person, causing that person to feel fear and endangerment for themselves or their family. The variation in stalking behavior ranges from hang-up phone calls to more direct threats toward a victim. The likelihood of injury increases when the stalking behavior escalates over time. Whereas under the laws of Dickinson County, Kansas, and all jurisdictions in the U.S., stalking is a crime. Whereas the majority of victims are stalked by someone they know, typically an ex-dating partner or acquaintance, and 3 in 4 women killed in an intimate partner by an intimate partner had been stalked by that same intimate partner. Whereas the statistics do not represent the true incidence and prevalence of stalking for multiple reasons, including not all victims report the crime to the law enforcement, and stalking is a tactic of domestic violence and sexual abuse, so it may not be reported as a primary form of abuse and victimization, although the victim has experienced stalking along with other forms of abuse. Whereas many stalking victims are forced to protect themselves by relocating, changing their identities, changing jobs, and obtaining protection orders. Whereas many stalking victims lose time from work and experience serious psychological distress and lost productivity at a much higher rate than general population. Whereas communities can better combat stalking by raising awareness, adopting multidisciplinary response teams of local agencies and organizations, and by providing more and better victim services. And now, therefore, the Dickinson County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim January 2025 as National Stalking Awareness Month.
Talk a little faster there, I wouldn't be able to hear you.
Sorry, I used to teach kindergarten. I'm great at, but little people is where I'm at. Parent-child advocate.
Amy, if you'll give this one.
Mr. Chairman, I'd go ahead and make the motion, and I think we can combine that, both proclamations into one motion, that we do approve and appreciate these proclamations being brought before us.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any other discussion?
We appreciate your guys' assistance in helping with everything that we stand for and work for. And we're dedicated to helping Abilene and Dickinson County get rid of the violence and stalking and trafficking. And I-35 and I-70 are a huge intersection, and unfortunately, we are the center of it all. And it is an upward battle right now.
We'll need the all in favor vote.
Yes, I'm just signing these here. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Let me go ahead and sign these.
Can you tell us a little bit about the involvement as far as DVAC in Dickinson County and how people are assisted here and some of the partnerships you have with other groups here?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we do, DVAC has a 30-minute response time to hospitals. So if there's a sexual assault or domestic violence or stalking or anything where a person goes to the hospital and they want a representative advocate to come and talk to them, stand by them, give them information, we have 30-minute response. We have a 24/7 hotline, and we have an advocate on call 24/7. So we get the call, we respond immediately. What we do is we provide resources for housing. We have a court advocate that comes to court here in Abilene for our victims to sit with them. We provide resources. We have a direct link with Kansas Legal Service, so we can get you moved up if you've been a victim of that. We provide parent-child education if you're having to leave a situation or how to co-parent with an abusive person or things like that. So our goal is to help educate and empower victims, but also help educate the perpetrator. We're not here to say, oh, the abuser's horrible, they're mean, you should never be with them. We hope for education and we hope for rehabilitation so people can live the best life that they can live possible. And to stop the generational cycle. We want it to stop today so the next generation doesn't have to deal with it. I would love to not have a job. Absolutely love it. Most of the employees at DVAC are victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, things like that. So we understand that it's not a matter of why don't you just, it's not that easy. It is not that easy. There's a lot involved and it's a process, but we're here to walk with you through that process. If you know somebody that's dealing with anything, you can call us. It's completely confidential. We don't talk to anybody unless you tell us we can talk to somebody, but we're here to support everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is kind of a photo thing that we always do with the chairman. So with him handing this to you, and he'll have a lot of photos today.
I work with a lot of big old committees. Yeah. It's all in here, confidential. It'd be $1.
Hey, you're gonna have to hit DVAC up for that one.
I think he was talking to the photographer.
I get it.
Well,
Dave, if you want, we can call you if you want to go outside, because we're going to be a while before you're on the agenda. I mean, if you don't mind standing or sitting, but it's going to be at least a half an hour or so.
thank you so much, guys.
There's a chair.
And we'll get you when you're ready for your CUP if you want to do that. You want to read them?
Yes. Per the Open Meetings Act, KSA 75-4317 and 75-4318A, as the elected board, the county commission is not allowed to meet or make any decisions without posting the meetings. They are only allowed to act on items on the agenda which they set. During their regular meeting, the county commission may allow for public comments on items not listed on the approved agenda. If you wish to provide comments, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address. If you are online, raise your hand and we will unmute you. Please state your name and address. Public comments shall be addressed to the county commission only and not to the speaker or the audience. Only the county commission will be permitted to ask the speaker questions. The public comment period is not a back and forth discussion with the county commission. You should make your views and input known to them, but it is not a time to ask them questions. You should not expect them to respond to your comments. Comments may express support or agreement with the previous speakers, but in the interest of time, please do not repeat the same information. You may state something to the effect of your name and address and you agree with the previous speaker. It is important to maintain a respectful, non-threatening atmosphere for anyone who would like to speak. Please do not engage in such actions as cheering, booing, clapping, insults, threats, etc.
This will be on the non-agenda items. We will be taking public comments on agenda items.
Greg, if you wouldn't mind pausing for just 1 second, I think Ron and
Great, if you'd stand up, please.
I'm just going to go on the record, it wasn't my idea.
And we're going to take more pictures.
There you go.
Craig, on behalf of the
There you go.
On behalf of Dickinson County, its employees and staff, we want to thank you for all you've done for us, the work you've done. We're sitting in a building you were involved with, helping us out.
I hope I don't get to use it.
You're-
To the jail.
Everything from the building to our recovery court, this guy's been involved with many occasions. He's been on a number of boards. I can't even name them all. And it was a privilege to serve with you as a commissioner. I've learned a lot from you, and you've taught all of us and a lot, and you respect your employees, and I have admiration for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on. Agenda items, non-agenda items. Anybody care to speak on those? Anybody online?
See if there's anybody on here. There's no hands
Okay.
raised already.
Report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh. Yes.
We have a lot of people online. There is a question. Well, no,
No.
not anymore.
Waiting.
Well, Diane Miller has her hand raised. Diane, I've unmuted you. Diane?
Is there a mute on her computer or their computer? Would that be the other part?
She would have to unmute herself. I've been muted her on this side, but
Okay. Moving on then.
Okay.
Now you want to give a report?
I do. We do have an open position on the Planning and Zoning Board, and we are accepting applications. That's on the zoning page. We have an open mechanic position in the Highway Department, and then also, as Martin reported earlier, a operator position. The Highway Department cleared all paved and county roads after the storm, 687 hours, an estimated cost of $45,500 in labor and equipment. Thank you to all the first responders and the townships in the county for their assistance during the winter weather. And as you heard during the study session, they went above and beyond, provided a lot of assistance for not only county citizens, but the cities and our employees as well. Thank you to Waltz Four Seasons. They helped stranded motorists. Also, that we also heard from Jerry that we've got some leaks in the jail that we're going to be working through as well. And then at the health department, Brad's aware of this, the wind blew the snow so hard from the north, it came in under the eaves, and we took out 18 bags of snow and insulation that we are going to have to go back in, clean out and replace and address that problem. So that's all I would have unless you have any questions for me.
Ron, Lynn, any questions?
I think Diane was trying to get unmuted again.
Okay.
Is it on our part to unmute?
I've been muted, everyone.
Could you relay her question to you if she could text it to you?
It says that she was muted.
They're unmuted now.
Okay.
Okay, Doug's not here. No report from him.
No.
Okay. Notice communication, did you have a thank you for the gift card we gave before Christmas? Introduction, consideration of resolutions. Disaster declaration. You know,
Commissioners, this is resolution 0104-2025. It is the state of local disaster emergency for Dickinson County, Kansas. And unfortunately, we found ourselves doing this numerous times over many years. This is a declaration that we're asking the county commission to formally approve. Craig has already signed it as a chairman. He has statutory authority to do that. And this will allow us to ask for reimbursement by federal law for the claims that we could have for the work that was done in the timeframe for the storm. This goes for, or will remain in effect for 7 days unless it's terminated early or we ask for an extension on that. So Chancey has submitted it to the state. This is the formal process for you.
you might, Chancey, the cities that are in this declaration area are also covered under this, correct?
We had a meeting Friday before and let all the cities know and everybody's tracking stuff. And then the next process after we've done it is have a public assistance meeting with all the other cities. And everybody compiles their information with the state to get the reimbursement process started, if that's going to be a thing.
And so they don't have to do it individually.
We'll do it all together and I'll coordinate that with everybody.
Any other questions for Jill or Chancey? I make a motion, we approve resolution 0104-2025.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Appointment of Martin Snyder to the PD and Planning Zoning Board.
So commissioners, you have a resolution in front of you to appoint Martin Schneider to continue his service on the Planning and Zoning and the Board of Zoning Appeals Board. And that is addressed in the resolution that was passed many years ago when the board was established. Martin is willing to agree to another 3-year term. So it starts this month and will continue on until January of 2028. And we appreciate his willingness to continue that service. And I would ask that you adopt this resolution.
I'll make the motion to accept the appointment of Martin Snyder.
I'll second it. Any other discussion?
And that's the resolution 010925.
Not all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. Unfinished business. Janelle, you want to introduce anybody who's involved in this?
Sure, commissioners, you had last week asked that we would have Bill Hayes come back in and present some further information from TAG. And Phil is here and is willing to do that. We have a PowerPoint that we will be showing, if I can get it to come up. There we go. So there we go.
Quite a lot's changed in the last week. I'm out of Sumner County and you guys got absolutely hammered up here. We had a lot of ice and snowpack ice pack under the limited 2 to 4 inches of snow that we had, but 18 plus inches, I can't imagine it. So kudos to everybody that was involved clearing the roads. I appreciated them on safe passage getting up here this morning. So the first slide here, this is the Plan C Plan C slide that was included in last week's presentation. This is just a quick reference if you wanted to have a side-by-side when we get into kind of the direction that we're going based on the feedback that was received from the public, from the commission, and myself and Heather worked with the project team here with Dickinson County in response to that feedback. So if we go to the next slide here, and actually, if you could go back one slide.
Yeah.
The number last week was right under 1.2, so 1.18 million. It was on the left side of that, but a little slow. So here we are. The compensation plan changes. This is a pretty sophisticated document. We made a couple of changes, and what I would say that the easiest thing I can do is to say that we reduce the scale We watered down what I would say is a recommended position from where we were with Plan C, looking at this as kind of a possible two-phase implementation when you look at the financial impact. So I do want to say on item 1 here, we did maintain the existing benchmark salary data that came into.
Anybody else want some, you want to hand some out if we got any extra there? Anybody that want them out in the audience?
So we did maintain the salary benchmark position data that we brought into the study. What we did is just reduced the position that Dickinson County, when we're trying to juggle looking at your existing pay scale, what you had done since the COVID wage pressures, and not really taking steps back against your existing pay scales. So we reduced this position, and you can see the impact when we look at the base grades here. Grades 10 through 15 on the left side. These are going to be more of your operational, industrial, semi-skilled, skilled positions, clerical and office staff. You can see there was a very, very small haircut. Grade 10 reduced by 21 cents, grade 15, the minimum reduced by 22 cents. So on average, about a 20 cent reduction. Your mid-level grades 30 through 35, they're in the middle. These are going to be more of your managerial, administrative, sales, creative, and professional positions. And these are what dovetail and align based on the Fair Labor Standards Act, which is out of the U.S. Department of Labor. You can see a much more sizable haircut. We shrunk down $1.51 off the minimum for a grade 30, came down $2.44 off the minimum for a grade 35. And then there was a lot more pressure, I joke, having served in the military, that grades 40 through 42, your executive and highly specialized positions, went to boot camp and basically just got shaved. So it was definitely more than a haircut. 539 to 712 off the minimums. And then that's obviously going to relieve some financial pressure as you start looking at the impact of your workforce and individual employees. So if we go to the next slide here, end up with Plan D, and I know Medicare, I guess, was discussed earlier in the work session. It's interesting that we ended with Plan C last week, which you had as your second slide. Plan D is kind of the medication piece to Medicaid. And I looked at this, not trying to be tongue in cheek here, but taking the prescriptive feedback from the public and from the commission last week to end up on a Plan D for consideration today. Items A, the 3% COLA across the board for your 141 active employees did not change. That's still a value of $242 to the county. You can see the averages there from the lowest to the highest impacted per hour. What the average is across the board is about 76 cents an hour for 141 employees. The minimum pay scales, again, we watered down the pay scales. We diluted those with that haircut exercise, and that reduced our minimum pay scale adjustments from 39 employees now to 24 employees. And the financial impact was reduced from 130,000 down to 55,000. You can see the averages and the impacts there. By reducing the scale, we have reduced the average tenure, and we've also, the longest tenured impacted employee is no longer at 34 years. It would be 11 and a half years of service with the county. There's 5 employees that are probably the most impacted here, and they have an average of 9 years of employment. Item C is the wage compression, and this is where we've seen some significant movement downward too. Instead of 112 employees being compressed, your compressed population is down to 96 employees. The compressed dollars with that $6,000 limiter is down to $397,537. And you can see the overall impact. And again, this is with that $6,000 limiter, ranges from 1 penny an hour to $2.88 an hour. There's 65 out of the 96 that would not be limited. So the cap or the governor would not be sitting on top of them. there's 31 remaining employees that would have that limiter applied to them. So that would cap them at the $6,000. And the average tenure of those that would be limited still with the reduced scales is 15 plus years of service with the county and average age of about 54 and a half. We are looking at the dollar amounts with the limiter. There would be $186,000 allocated to those 31 individuals, and about $178,000 would be left on the shelf or on the sidelines. Unadjusted, there'd be 46 employees that essentially get the 3% COLA, and they would be positioned appropriately either at or above market value based on the scale that you're adopting that ties all your positions together. So a lot of moving parts with this, but at the end of the day, the total financial commitment would be $695,183.
And I would just note the past several years, that's in the range that we have allocated budget funds for.
Slower. Okay, go ahead, Phil.
Moving to this slide here, the 31 employees that would be limited, what's interesting, and I hesitate to put labels on this, but I think when you think about the 31 employees without the limiter, these would be, there's 18 that are over 12,000. So there's obviously then another 13 that would be under 12,000, but above 6,000. But the biggest perceived winners that have an annual impact on the compression picture is 12,000 plus. And this really ranges across your whole spectrum, across just about every department and most job grade classifications, ranging from grades 14, 15, 30, 31, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then grades 40 and 41 as well. Commissioner Peterson, you had asked for a list of the winners and losers. I don't really like to focus on kind of the people, but I wanted to draw attention on the grades and the titles. And so beyond the grades, because that may not tell you a whole lot, but these 18 folks that are most compressed in the county one is an assistant county attorney. You have a handful of folks in your jail or your corrections staff, the county administrator, and these are alphabetical. So I went numerically across on the grades and alphabetical in the job titles. We've got 3 elected officials, your clerk, your treasurer, and your sheriff that are show pretty significant compression. Several road deputies, or a deputy 2 and a deputy sergeant, a couple of directors. We have what I would consider probably 4 really qualified and well-tenured equipment operators for the county that demonstrate known compression, severe compression across the broad population. We have an office manager, your road and bridge supervisor, and already mentioned the sheriff there. So I guess my point is, if we try to chase down a reduction for one employee because the way the system is designed, there's unintended consequences that it's really hard to pick winners and losers per se. So if you start chasing down a rabbit hole on one thing, there's a lot of things that move within this.
And I'm not trying to emphasize the label part, even though it does show the concept that there were some inequities in what we were presenting. And so my concern is there's some that were going to be level or near level or a small increase. And then there were going to be some that had a 15, 20% increase. And so that's where you came back with the parts. Let's not give a $20,000 increase or 15 or the numbers in between. Let's put a cap of 6,000. And even at that, that's a rather significant percentage in comparison to what most of the employees would receive.
It is. And I think last week I had mentioned kind of the employment train, or the employment train stops, and different people get on the Dickinson County employment journey at different times, good times, up times, down times. Wage pressures have been more severe in the last few years. And so those more recent new hires within the last couple of years have benefited from a higher starting wage, but somebody that had been with the county 15 years ago and maybe the scale was much more stagnant, or it was a much.
Didn't have the differential in there.
And so what we're doing is these 31 that have been limited, they've probably been instead of the biggest perceived winners as this, they've probably been the biggest perceived losers because they've been undervalued or under market value for a number of years. And so when you think about the high dollar compression amounts, the 6,000 limiter or the 20,000, it's not a COLA. It's really just right sizing for the level of responsibility and the job that is defined in the position description that the county needs. And when we hire these individuals. So, but it's a difficult thing to, if you're not a comp expert, the sticker shock of it can seem really unpalatable, that it does seem excessive. But some of it is just right sizing. But this Plan D certainly allows us a path forward that we pump the brakes. It's a much more gradual component. It's well under the budget allocation that I think that occurred last year, but it's probably much closer in line from what Janelle was saying to what's occurred in the county in recent years. And if I could, just to kind of stay on this, if we go to the next slide, proposed next steps, and this is easy for me. I'm the consultant from outside of the area. From a pure numbers standpoint, I don't have the tough decision that you do as far as voting and the impact of this. But if we just simplify this into two boxes, one for 2025, I would strongly and professionally recommend that we implement the reduced 2025 pay scales, implement the 3% COLA across the board, that therefore everybody receives some sort of financial impact. Number 3, address the pay scale minimums of that $55,000. Item 4, address all the compression with that $6,000 limiter of the 397. That totals out for $695,183 for the financial commitment for the year. Ignore the gray there for a second. If we transition into the new year, forward looking into 26, because we still have some compression that was left on the sidelines, I would recommend we still freeze the pay scales. That does not mean that employees would not receive an increase because they would just utilize a step system. If you recall last week, there was a comment made about a double dip, about a COLA increase plus a performance increase. This simplifies that piece and really adopting a formal scale. You can do pay scale maintenance in future years, down years, with a COLA impact, but employees can still step through their horizontal grade path. That would be an estimated 2.5%, 2.4% increase based on the surgical and the strategic multipliers that we showed last week, but that would have a cost of about $210,000 next year. No COLA for the beginning of the year in 26, no pay scale minimums to address because we froze that scale. And then we addressed the remaining $178,000 of that leftover compression impact of those 31 employees. And so your anticipated spend next year would be about $389,000, which is probably much closer to pre-COVID annual impacts on your workforce increases. Now, I've got in gray, the very bottom bullets, the 873, that would be if you just owned your 25 position and you removed the cap and you ate that 178 also, you could get out of the woods completely for $873,000 this year. And then all of the historical compression to right size everybody and let them cascade through the scale that is adopted, they would be in the right landing or the right cascading position.
Can you repeat that portion again? I was looking up there in the chart here both, so.
On the bottom of 2025, the 695, that's if you do the cap, the $6,000 cap. If you elect to not cap those individuals, you could clear out 2025, and this would be, you're going to do COLAs, your pay scale minimums, and all of your compression, you could be at 873 this year. And then you wouldn't have any hangover elements of that into 2026, and your estimated spend for your workforce increases would be about 210,000. So it's a matter of, do you want to own this in a single year? Yeah, pay now or pay later. Is this a 1 year or a 2 year proposition? And so we certainly reduced the scale and got the overall number down significantly. So I'm just, I guess, illustrating a couple of different options for consideration. And then the last slide that I have is just the impact of the base rate scales. And you have this slide, the companion slide from last week that had our initial professional recommendation on the pay scale. So this would be that reduced pay scale and how that sits. And with that, I'll stand for questions now or at the appropriate time.
This is the time for anybody in the audience. We'll use the same format for 3 minutes. Okay, question. Phil or the commission.
What was the?
Why don't you stand up and state your name?
Peter Olson, Commissioner-elect. What was the Plan D percentage increase as a whole?
So the 3% COLA, get that out of the way. And I believe, and I failed to write that down, but I believe, and I can certainly circle back on this, but I believe it's a 5.74% increase as a whole after the COLA.
Gotcha. With the COLA, we're talking 0.9.
It'd be closer to 9,
Okay.
and that right sizes your entire workforce. And I
more standard.
yeah, and it's still, I hate to, it would be high, especially for a governmental or a public employer. But what we're trying to do is unpack 34 years and right size that. So I know a comment was made last week that, maybe the easy solution, and there's nothing easy in HR anymore, but the easy solution is just raise the hiring wage because that attracts our new talent. And the comment, and it's just stuck with me, was made that we don't need to worry about our tenured folks that have been here because they've been here for a while. And essentially we can take them for granted because the comment was made on 2 occasions that they're not going anywhere. And I think that's a dangerous proposition, and it was not made by a commissioner. But to take your workforce for granted, especially your mid-level and your senior positioned employees, that when the going gets tough and the tough gets going, I mean, a lot of these folks really stepped up this last week. So as an HR professional, I'm a fiscal conservative, I'm a Republican, but I'm a business owner, and taking care of your employees is fundamental number one. Pre-COVID, I think recruiting in the talent war, recruiting was the name of the game. Once COVID hit, retention really solidified as priority number one for a lot of organizations. And there's a cost of turnover, and it would probably far outweigh the initial number that was circulating in the community if some of your positions turned over. I know a couple weeks ago, there's a study that was released to the Kansas legislature. We're near a constitutional crisis for rural Kansas attorneys. And I know there's an attorney open. The county councilor last week had indicated that. Mechanic is open. That is a tough position. New talent, new entrance into the world of work. They don't think certain work is as sexy anymore, or the debt load that comes from the educational piece that comes in the attorney, and that's where the highly specialized your attorney groups would actually be building into that echelon there. So there's just I wish I could simplify this down to a couple of three pieces, but there's just a lot in motion when you think about the world of work on attracting talent, but more importantly, retaining that talent and building your pipeline for future generations of your leadership here. So.
What would be the amount on the benefit package? I don't know if that's a Marcia question, or how much does that boost, say, like the employee? So if someone was making $50,000.
That number right now, do you have that, Marcus?
But would a guesstimate be,
Yeah.
it might put another $15,000 or $20,000 onto that?
In the 25 budget, we budgeted all the benefits based on the higher number of the 1.1 million. So in the 25 budget, we do have the benefit portion covered because we had to budget for that.
But that's kind of
And I don't have the
it's not a,
right now. I could get that information, but I don't have that with me right now.
And I know that you were talking about the percentage, and I think Diane Miller mentioned the 40%, and that was, looking at the 2023 numbers, that was right on the benefit percentage there. We looked at that for the 24, and that was about 37%. Now that includes your paid health insurance, and that all depends on, if it's a single plan, employee plus children, those type of things. Just to touch on a few budgetary issues, there's a mindset right now in the public that we're not mindful of taxpayer. I think that's something I wanted to address a little bit because it's frustrating me because I've worked with all of these people. They're very conservative. They're very mindful of our taxpayer dollars. You talk to any one of them, they're coming in here, they're trying to come up with multiple solutions that we can do to lower their budgets or to be as cost effective on things. We'll get a used piece of equipment that'll last an extra 30 years, whatever we have to do. And so I can tell you, as much information is going out there in the public, we are mindful, we are doing our best, and we are working for the best of the people. I've lived in this community for a long time, and I'm telling you, we work with some really, really good individuals, and these are your neighbors, these are your family members, these are your friends. So before you pass all your judgment, just please remember some of those things. So the salary for 2024, I don't have the final numbers yet because we still have a couple of pay periods going out, or not pay periods, I'm sorry, but accounts payable periods coming out. And, we'll have some additional expenses coming out for the month 13. But we do, fortunately, have our salary and benefit numbers completed. So for 2024, right now, off of what was just budgeted for the 2025 budget, we're already going to immediately, under the salary portion of budget, we will see a $227,000 savings off of what we were estimating when we were doing that budget in about July and August. So that's in salary alone. We're also going to see $295,000 in savings on the benefit side of it. So you're looking at about $523,107 that we're entering 2025, because 2024 is closed on those numbers with the savings already of over $500,000. When we're looking at these budgets, you are talking about the top number. It never comes in at that. We are always going to come in. You're going to have openings. You're going to have positions that are not filled. And so when we're basing that number, if you just walk out and you want to talk about the 100% number, that's not the number that's realistic. You're going to come in under that every single year, no matter what. So right now, and this is significantly lower than what we actually budgeted for 2024, is then you're talking about a year and a half prior to that. So now I go back in July when we have about 6 months of information, and we do those estimates to finish out that year for the budget. And that's where we're coming out with over $500,000 in savings already moving into the 2025 budget. So just, that's when you look at even that $695,000, that's not exactly how it's actually going to affect it. Plus, we budgeted a significant amount more than that. So we are going to see some great savings coming forward, thanks to feedback of the public and thanks to the commission asking these questions. We're going to see a savings for these taxpayers instantly. So I just want everyone to know we are working for you. We're trying to do our best, and we are continuing to keep you in mind, whether you think so or not. Also on the health insurance side, we touched on Buchanan. There were some ideas about moving to a health broker. Well, we did do that. And when we moved from state plan to the health broker, we actually received an instant savings over last year, about $215,000. These are continued things that we are trying to implement, to put in, to have savings for the future, to make this so that we can manage this, try to lower these property taxes as much as we can moving into the future, because we get it. It is getting challenging, but once again, we live here too. We're doing the same thing. We're paying those taxes as well. So we're trying to do our best. We're going to continue to look at services. Those are something I just want to touch on. We have those numbers just coming out here from the 2024. And so there is some immediate savings you're at least going to see moving into that. So
I appreciate your comments and answer on that. It's information we need to hear and have it discussed openly. So.
Anybody else in the pub? Oh, I'm sorry.
If I can just maybe add on to Commissioner Peterson's comment, the benefit load on top of the base salary. beyond the employer contributions for FICA and medical taxes, your work comp tax. But you've got obviously 6% for CAPERS, and then KPNF has a higher load. But a 6% on the 695,000 is about 42,000. I don't have the dissection between who's on KPNF and what that number would be, but for a $50,000 employee, if a number was thrown out last week at 40%, that does seem high. And what you're talking about on the health insurance piece of it, that savings and going through with that different broker, I would suspect that those cost savings would continue putting pressure on your brokers and look in there. So I don't take this lightly. I know there's hidden costs, and but at the end of the day, the real hidden cost is if you turn staff over and you are not able to deliver services, there's a cost that comes with that as well. And so trying to find the balance, strike the balance, which is what we set out to do with the reduction in the overall scale, really cut the initial number in half just about. So.
And I do know, and it's been discussed or brought out, that it can be attractive to have those benefits, and we want to have them, and they help the employee or whoever it is. But also that's the downside of that is you can't go to the grocery store and say, I've got benefits, and it's not money that they can spend or such as far as right now. So
I don't know if the three of you subscribe to NeoGov. There's an article that came out in 2022 that talked about the quiet crisis in the public sector. This has come up since 2022 in every public client of ours that we've worked with. But the number of applicants, qualified applicants, has continued to diminish since 2016. In the public sector, I think, is probably tighter than the private sector because starting wages aren't as competitive. But what was interesting on the back half of that article, it talked about, it surveyed close to 300 HR directors throughout public entities. And then it surveyed 1,000 plus, 1,700, I believe it was, individuals, county or government employees, and said, what attracts you to the public sector? Benefits, I think, was number one at 63%, and pay was number two at 57%. So yeah, benefits are important, but pay is too. I think it was Zig Ziglar that said, what is it? Money's not everything, but it's right up there with oxygen. And I think the wage pressures that we've had is really demonstrated that over the last few years.
I did put a copy of that article in the packet this morning, so you have that. So I know we've got some people online that would like to speak. I've unmuted everyone. I'm not sure why they're not coming through.
do we need our tech people here?
It looks like she's unmuted. Diane is. And I think Barb Barrett also had a question.
While we're waiting for that, anybody in the audience? Same rules?
I'll just do a sound check. This is Barb. Just
Okay.
curious if it was possible for the slides and the handouts to be made available for those of us online. It was kind of hard to follow along with that discussion. If you can share the screen.
They should be seeing them.
You can't see them at all, Barb?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay.
Thanks.
Wilson.
Yeah, very welcome. 2201 South Washington. Martin, so I appreciate your figures. But is there a $7 million increase in the budget from 23 to 25?
So that's actually a bit of some misunderstanding as well. So when you look at the budget and you look at the actual budget authority, I know that's what you're talking about. It looks very significant. And a lot of that can be explained pretty quickly. The unfortunate part is, like this year we did the 800 radio project, have to budget in those dollars. So when you set that in there, you're looking at a big number that throws an anomaly into some of these years, and it makes it look a little out of whack. We have some other processes. We have the sales tax for the highway fund. So we collect those dollars, and we have numerous projects coming up in the future. And so unfortunately, because those are such great projects at expense, it's built those funds up. So now it makes the 2024, 2025 budgets look a little inflated because there are some dollars that have been collected with that sales tax that is going to be expensed out with some of the larger projects coming up in the future. But if those dollars right now, say if I just didn't want to make the budget look so big, I'd say, well, instead of budgeting what's actually coming in for that sales tax, we just say we're only going to budget $1 million, even though there's $4 million in that fund. So then that would immediately drop your budget by, a quick $3 or $4 million. Well, that's not being as transparent as we want. We want to show you exactly how many dollars are in that fund. So that highway fund does right now have some dollars that are going to be going out shortly into upcoming projects in the years to come. So those are a couple of the specific items that hit a budget pretty quick. And I can always, if there's ever any questions on that, my phone doesn't really ring that often, but I'm more than happy to sit down with guys and go through some of these budgets with you, because there's a few things that really, if you look at it, because you're right, Greg, like that number makes it look significant. And the other thing is you look at that budget authority, which is, so in 2025, you're seeing the budget authority, and then you look at the year before and you're seeing the actual expenses, and you're like, what the heck are they doing, raising the budget by $7 million, and they're going to spend $7 million more dollars? Well, really not, because those other funds that we can go through are going to show in the coming year.
But 2 years ago, wouldn't that have shown past? My point is each budget should be the same. You should have.
Well, you get your anomalies, like I said, on the 800 radio project for one. So we all of a sudden, we have a sales tax coming in that we're going to pay out over time. But in 1 year now, we're going to have a $3.5–4 million expense.
Okay, so why did we have those sales tax increases when we have $11–14 million cash? Why didn't you just pay for the radios?
So the way the cash is worked out across that budget too, we have all these funds that are all have statutory requirements on them. And unfortunately, it's not just an open checkbook. And if it was, it would make it a lot easier, I can tell you that. But we have very specific rules on how so there may be $2 million here, $1 million here, and $3 million here. But we have state laws that tell us how those can be spent. And so we might have opioid dollars showing up in this fund, but that has very specific uses they can be spent. We have the highway sales tax passed with a very specific list of how those monies can be spent by the taxpayers who voted for that. And so we can only use those dollars. We can't use that to pay for the sheriff's department. That has to be used in the highway department. So that leads to some misunderstandings and confusion as well. And Greg, to your point, I'm learning through this process as I'm seeing this public information come in, and I'm seeing that I've got to do a better job. Like on the website, I need to be able to present some of this.
You can't find your budget numbers.
And that's, I went back and looked.
cannot find a total budget.
Because Marcia she emailed me, and I'm like, note taken, like I've got to get those on there. And so I think budgets, audits, I should have those on that finance page, and that hold me accountable. That's on me. And I think that's something I can do better. And so I really am learning through this process, and I think everybody is. We're taking the feedback. Now we just want to improve moving forward in the future too. So.
I might inject that process or accounting procedure was in place. And so even though Marcus kind of says it's on me, I think it's more what we do from this day forth, or look for ways to help on that. But it's not a system he created, you might say. And
10 years ago, you can find it in the first paragraph of your financial statement. You could find it, you can't find it anymore. It would be helpful.
Updates the website and, so for this year, but yes.
Any other questions? Nothing.
Diane looks like she's unmuted, but
Okay. Closing the comments for the agenda items. Ron, Lynn, any other questions for Phil?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would move that we accept Plan D, revised compensation plan, and the total would be $695,183 off of it. That's correct, no?
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Other business, CUP, self-service fuel station, Highway 15, Jason and Ryan. Paul?
Tim Hamilton, Planning and Zoning. Please find the attached conditional permits for your consideration. All conditional use permits must be approved individually. Please note that CUP 2409 will involve a resolution with the final approved conditions that the county commission will sign at the next meeting. On December 19th, 2024, the Planning Commission voted to recommend approval of the following. This is CUP 24-07, consideration of a conditional use permit to establish a self-serve fueling station on a parcel of land located in Section 5, Township 16, Range 2, generally located at the northwest corner of Highway 4 and Highway 15 at the request of Jason Hahn. The Planning Commission, in a unanimous vote, is recommending approval with the following conditions. Prior to a building permit being issued for the site, applicant must provide correspondence indicating coordination with KDOT and KDHE for approvals. Applicant must meet all state and federal requirements for safety and environmental compliance. The commission options are approve CUP 2407 with staff conditions, approve with any additional conditions as deemed necessary, or deny the request. This would require proof that the use is unacceptable at this location. And we did not receive any public comment at the Planning Commission meeting regarding this. This was is looked at, I think, local at that regional level of the county. That portion of the county there is being a very big advantage to have a fueling station down there by Elmo. And so I believe the applicant is here to answer any questions if you have any.
Applicant have any questions for us? Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions for me?
I want you to state your name and
I'm Jason Hahn, one with the project,
your address.
145 Highway 4.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Any other comments?
Maybe more for Tim, but were there extra steps to go through since it is a Highway 15, a state highway, or?
Yeah, the state is involved in that, KDHE and KDOT especially, because of the entrance. And I believe the applicant is working with both those agencies and is getting those final approvals done.
So as long as those are satisfied, then that's.
Yeah.
Good.
And there's not going to be any, my understanding is you're not planning any retail facility there.
Maybe some vending machines in the future.
Oh, but
Just no store, nothing, just simple.
Okay.
Self-serve, so.
Have a motion to approve this zoning
I'll make that motion to approve it.
CUP 2407.
407, yes.
I'll second that motion. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you for your investment in the county.
Want me to stick around?
Yep, yes, as well.
Okay, next item is CUP 24-08, consideration of a conditional use permit to establish a wholesale lumber mill and on a parcel of land in the northwest quarter of Section 19, Township 11, Range 3, generally located at 46 3400 Avenue at the request of Danny Bontrager. The Planning Commission, in a unanimous vote, recommended approval of the request with the following conditions. Maintain the road maintenance agreement with the township and install sign directing traffic, truck traffic north along Key Road. Need to point out that the Key Road has been improved. The applicant has gotten in touch with the township and established a road maintenance agreement, and it is rocked. On that portion of it, I went by there and was able to access it.
Sherman or Senator or Cheever?
It's, I believe it's Sherman.
I didn't look at the map.
But the only conditions were to maintain that road maintenance agreement and install sign
Sure, yeah.
directing truck traffic along Key Road going north. So your options would be to approve CUP 2408 with the conditions presented, approve with any additional conditions as deemed necessary, or deny the request if it's deemed inappropriate. So I know, again, no public comment about this was raised at the Planning Commission meeting. This is similar to a use that was approved back January last year, a similar mill, but this is a little bit smaller, I think, than the one that was approved last year. So the applicant is present here if you have any questions for him.
You get asked for permission.
The road is on the town line, Cheever and Sherman Town line.
Okay.
And Cheever got that part of the road. We are in Sherman Township.
Cheever maintains the road.
I was in Cheever Township.
You've worked with Cheever Township and makes road mainstream with them. Okay.
So the 31-foot width, I mean, that stands out and is good. What type of traffic will go in there? I mean, are there going to be any semis? Because it switches to a 12-foot driveway and kind of tight turns and so on. So what type of?
There'll be semis, lumber and log trucks.
And that radius is
It's adequate.
adequate for
Been on the site, and based on what his plan is, I think he's going to make it actually those interior drives a little bit wider, I think, than what you had originally intended. So.
And then at the entryway, the township will make some improvements, or the county?
That's the township.
But they'll be able to take care of that portion and.
The driveways would be a part of
Private.
applicants have, right? After you come off the township road, it's your responsibility to maintain your driveway.
Yes.
Looking to approve this CUP.
Make a motion to approve CUP 2408.
Second it. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Much carried.
Okay, item C, CUP 2409, consideration of a conditional use permit to expand operation of a rock quarry at the southwest border of Section 1, Township 13, Range 4, generally located at the northeast corner of 2400 Avenue and Bain Road at the request of David Walker, James and Rainey McLaughlin. The applicant is in the process of registering the site. I should say the applicant's subcontractor, who is actually going to be doing the work with that, is registering the site with the Kansas Division of Conservation and is conducting geotechnical testing on effects of blasting in the area. The Planning Commission, in a 3-2 vote, recommended approval of the request with the following conditions. You can refer to my staff report for my recommendations. The applicant may continue operations in the west half of Section 1, provided the applicant complies with all requirements of state of Kansas matrix of agencies. And the matrix of agencies is a list of basically requirements at the state, federal, and local level that regulates mining operations. A dust abatement plan, since this project is within a 1/4 mile of a residential structure, updated site plan for this location prepared by a licensed surveyor to indicate state required setbacks, grading and drainage plan. A reclamation bond in an amount acceptable to the county engineer and the state. Now, the way this usually works is I have looked back 30 years, there is no record that I can see of the county ever holding a bond or any kind of reclamation of any quarry in the county. That's usually done at the state level, my understanding, but it's given as an option. It's either in our regulations to have it either bonded locally, or I would say bonded with the state, since the state already has a bond for it that they have to apply for. The Planning Commission, I also meant to mention as one of the conditions of approval was they are recommending that the applicant and or subcontractors enter into a road maintenance agreement with either the Road and Bridge Department or the Township Board. With regard to registration of the site, Bear Construction is in the process of registering the site with the State of Kansas Division of Conservation. The applicant and subcontractors, that would be Walker Stone, Crest Quarries, Bear Construction, would need to submit documentation or correspondence from the state dated for 2025 that confirm that they're in good standing and are current with any licensing required. Dickinson County does not currently issue business licenses for this type of operation. Also, proof of a reclamation bond and plan specific to the southwest border of Section 1 has been submitted to the state. Based on information received from the state, the most recent license from Walker Stone, I believe, was for another site I think it was in at least going back to 2006, because I was able to find that one resolution approving an area of Section 2 in this area. So typically both registration sites and licensing are renewed annually with the state. However, the state will typically only approve new registration of sites and licensing after the local governing body has approved the conditional use permit. It should be pointed out that although the zoning regulations require a decommissioning bond be submitted to the county, staff has, as I stated earlier, unable to find proof of a reclamation bond in the name of the county being beneficiary ever being obtained from any applicant over the past 30 years. Should the commission approve this request, staff recommends all documentation from the state approving the site and confirming the status of the applicant and subcontractors, including proof of bonding for reclamation, be submitted to staff within 60 days. This time frame also applies to the submission of dust control plan, site plan, and revised water study if applicable. I've looked back, I've found two resolutions, one from 2000 approving a site in Section 2, and that same Section 2 in 2006. There was a reference in the resolution from 2000 that basically stated that periodic well testing was a condition of approval of that particular site to establish and when I say periodic, I mean to establish a base level for the area wells for residential housing in around the vicinity. That could be an option for this as well. You could just have them do a test to make sure, establish some sort of baseline. The other option would be to, either that or update the submitted water well study that was included in, I think, that binder packet. It was dated from like 1996 or something like that. And so you could either have them update that or go through that or do the well testing on the residential properties or both. Staff is currently in the process of working with the Planning Commission on updating our regulations to conform to the updated comprehensive plan. The requirements for quarries currently addressed in the regulations may be amended because there may have been changes statewide to reflect the current state of Kansas policy. Staff is also scheduling training for the Planning Commission for either February or March. This would be open to the public. However, no other, I don't believe public comment would be received since this involves procedural due process training for the commissioners. Under Surface Mining Land Conservation Reclamation Act, the licensing is mentioned as well as site registration. And as of this morning, I've received confirmation that they have contacted the state. I have not received approval yet from the state on letterhead saying that they have been approved and that they are within have been registered yet or have been approved and licensed for that site yet. So I would recommend those conditions as mentioned. I said those are things that I think that should be addressed first is the registration of the site and the licensing, any licensing, just and yes. Until that happens, I would say probably you have the option of putting a stay on any activity that they're currently doing on that southwest border. That's documentation from the state is received. So if approved. So with that, I believe the Mr. Walker or his subcontractors are here from Bear Construction.
Dave or Mark, you want any questions for us? I do have one question. I see 50 foot from a well. That's close enough or far enough away from, I see it in here, 50 foot from a well. Is that close enough or far enough away, in my opinion?
I'm a little hard to hear.
I thought you were just in your ear there.
Yeah.
I'll speak up. Yeah, the 50 foot away from a well.
50 foot.
I thought it said in here 50 foot. Maybe I read it wrong.
So we're going to be, roughly.
That back requirement is at least 50 foot. That's what it says in here.
Environmental services, with regard to area wells, the current setback for quarries is at least 50 feet.
From a well?
Yeah, and it's in your permit.
I think we're going to be 800 feet away.
Well, I know, but do we need to put that in there that can be at least 800 foot? That's what I'm saying.
I understanding, I'm representing my landowner.
Okay, well, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. What?
My understanding is that it's 1,000 feet. Isn't that right, Tim?
The applicant has agreed to 1,000 distance radius from.
Okay.
Yes.
My point
Good to know.
My point is mute then. That's all. Like I said, I saw a 50 foot and that brought it. So applicants, any?
He's an applicant.
I know you're representing a landowner.
I'm opposed to the whole thing and asking you to disapprove.
Okay, now we'll hear from Dave first then. Okay. You guys can remain friends.
We always have been.
I mean, I'm here to answer questions, but.
I can speak for the fact is that we need rock.
Yeah.
I mean,
we've been there for 50 years.
Yeah.
In the area. We've quarried 4 miles wide and 3 miles deep. And the landowner or the Miss Edwards is opposed to it because she doesn't want us to be there. And in my application, I included a study that we had done from 1985 to 95 by hydrologists that said that he was more concerned about the wells being in a pit and getting contamination than he was from any blasting, because the formation where the water is in is 100 feet or 70 feet or something below the ledge where we're working in. And I offered to have her well checked by hydrologists, tested, and we have hired a hydrologist that she has agreed to use. And I offered to use a seismologist to monitor the blasting, which we have installed and had two tests already. And most of them, or one of them, we have one 250 feet from the blast site and 1,800 feet from the blast site. And we actually had to adjust the seismograph that was 1,800 feet from the blast because it wouldn't pick it up. We had to make it more sensitive before it would even pick it up, the blast.
Can this map, excuse me, be brought up on the screen? And
I'm assuming this is 2500 Avenue. Is this my correct here? Is this 2500 Avenue? And then this here is where Lawrence used to live?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. I know where.
It's 24.
Yeah, right, yeah, but, yeah. Yeah, 25 runs over 2450.
Yeah, 24.
I got some work.
Well, 2450, but 2400.
Yeah, right, yeah.
All one round.
Well, I know where the Gary County line is. I figured that was it. I used to be in McLaughlin's place. Is this your place here?
Let me try this again.
This place is yours here.
We live in Dr. Morgan's old house.
Okay, I know where that is. That one used to be the Lawrence place years ago. Okay. So I don't have the address on here. You're wanting to come down this area here, the 300 acres, Dave?
There's a.
What is,
The quarter section is right here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then her house is here.
Oh, that's her house is here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Her house is here.
Okay.
This is where Hasselman lives.
Yeah. Okay, here's where we're quarrying now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we'll be going up in this area.
Okay.
Besides the draw.
is that screen helping getting us there a little bit?
Yep.
I mean, she'll enlarge
This
it.
is McLaughlin's here.
That's the old McLaughlin house.
Yeah, she'll just doing this.
Back out.
That's right there.
Yeah, okay.
The other right, that's right.
Have it right.
Right there. Right in here.
There now in the big map there.
Right here.
Okay. This here is what this section here, you McLaughlin's on this right here.
This quarter.
Yeah. Eric McLaughlin's kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Jim McLaughlin now.
Yeah, James. So I guess I should have.
What I would, I guess, comment on was, that house has been occupied by 5 different families in the last 50 years. And they've always had trouble with their well. And we, weren't even within half a mile of it before. But to me, it seems unethical for a real estate agent to sell a house that they know across the road has been quarried or been zoned for a quarry and not tell the landowner or the new house purchaser. And that's in fact what happened. We've got the area west of Vane Road of where we're quarrying now is zoned for a quarry. And that's, within, I don't know, 300 feet of her house.
And then, can you put the cursor on where the quarry is going to go? Or Dave, can you point that out? I mean,
to give you a little history, we were quarrying over in Geary County and we're about to get finished. And so I came to Tim Hamilton and asked him if everything was okay to go into that new quarter, because I wasn't sure what Martin Marietta had done. I sold it to Martin Marietta in 2001, bought it back in 2006, and I wasn't sure what they had done, and they hadn't done anything. And so COVID was on at the time, and we had a letter from the governor that said, not to meet, you shouldn't be meeting, we're in COVID, but there were certain exempt industries, and one of them was aggregate production. And so Mr. Hamilton gave us a CUP authority to go in there in 2020, which we did. And to me, I didn't even think we needed it because I had this area leased since 1973, which is 2 years before any zoning was even applicable in the area. And so I was just checking, and he said, "No, you're okay. Here's your CUP." And then later on, when Ms. Edwards asked the county zoning guy, what our conditions were or anything, and he said, "Well, they don't have a permit." And then he gave Jim McLaughlin a cease and desist order. And of course, Jim gave it to me, and I checked with him. And I showed him the emails. I showed him the governor's letter. I showed him the exemption. He said, "Oh, yeah, I remember." And then he said, "Yeah, but now we want you to get a permit." I said, "Well, I think I already have a permit from you." He said, "Yeah, well, you need to go through the process." So I said, "Okay." And so when we started going through the process, I get another cease and desist order. And I said, "What's this about?" He said, "Well, now that you've made application, you have to quit quarrying." I said, "Wait a minute, we've got contracts, we've got ready mixes that are depending on our product, and we don't have any other area that's approved by the state right now for that kind of material, because it takes quite a while to get approved." And anyway, he didn't lift it until we got to the planning commission meeting, and part of the approval of the conditional use permit was lifting the cease and desist order so we could get back to work. I sympathize with Ms. Edwards as far as not knowing that there was a quarry zoned. I don't know how she didn't know there was not a quarry in the area. I mean, driving out there in Geary County, we've quarried on both sides of that road. So she almost had to see that. But I sympathize with her not knowing, but I don't understand why, after 50 years, why we would be ordered to stop quarrying. Anyway, I'm open for questions.
Any questions for Dave?
I don't have any. We might come back to you or something, or Tim, but I guess no questions right now.
May I speak?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we're not governed by this 3-minute rule.
No.
Because we just went through quite a bit more than 3 minutes. And my name's Mark Edwards, and I practice law in Junction City, and my address is 439 West First Street in Junction City. And the landowner in this case is my daughter, Betsy, and Fred Moody is her husband, and they live there on the corner as described earlier. Now, it's real interesting. I lived my whole life practicing law. When you want to know what's encumbering neighboring property, you look at the land records. Okay? And I'll tell you, there's no land record of any existing lease that goes clear back to 1973, as told to you by Mr. Walker. What we've learned in this process is apparently there's an affidavit floating around from Jim, the landowner, saying, "Well, yeah, when my dad gave me that property, he told me there was a lease on it." Now, excuse my daughter Betsy for not picking up on that conversation between Jim and his dad. Come on. This is why we have register of deeds. We have land records, and there is no lease on file. So much for the notice to the world, because it is non-existent. Now, I think we ought to get you folks up to date. That meeting that happened on December 19th lasted well past the going home time of even 8 o'clock. It was well past 10. The first vote was against it. And I was ready to go home at that time, but then one of the commissioners said, well, Mr. Walker, what exactly do you want in the application? What restrictions you want? Now, I've gone to a lot of public meetings with a lot of officials over the years, but that's the very first time that I ever noted and never have seen that the actual applicant got to draft the language that went into the eventual approval that night by a vote of 3-2. And what I'm asking you to do today is just to disapprove the whole thing. And the reason I'm asking you to do that is because you've been supplied with I gave it to Tim. It was a CORA request that Betsy made to the Department of Conservation. And in that CORA request, she outlined her question, and then she also put down the response that the CORA people made. And you have that in your packet. And you'll see in that CORA request on Exhibit 2, there's a letter to Mr. Walker in 2012. And it says real clearly, it says the Department of Conservation, the DOC, the last paragraph, the DOC will be closing your file and there will not be a need for you to renew your license unless you conduct mining operations again in the state of Kansas. So he's known that now since 2012. Can't get any clearer than that. December 11th, 2012. Mr. Roller, do you have your?
Yeah.
Okay. And so Mr. Walker's known now for 13 years that if you want to do more mining operations, you better get a license. So nobody had made any kind of attempt at all to get a new license. And I supplied you folks with the actual statutes that deal with mining in the state of Kansas, surface mining, starting with 49601. And specifically, the reason I'm asking you to disapprove this is because we're dealing with an entity, whether it be Mr. Walker or Bear Construction, Meyer Construction, excuse me if I said it wrong. We're dealing with folks that just kind of seem to write their own rules. And I really have a big, big part when it comes to the fertile lands of Gary County and Riley County and Dickinson County about this nice area of the Flint Hills that we live in. And it really bothers me when folks think that they can go ahead and disrupt this landscape that has been in place for literally thousands of years. And they don't even have the license in place to do it after they've been told over 12 years ago that they needed to get a license and comply with the surface mining laws of the state of Kansas. And that's what Article 6 is. It was applied, it was actually adopted all in 1994. Well before this alleged lease existed. that nobody really would know about. I'm also asking you to take into consideration, when you look at 49605, it's very clear that no person shall engage in surface mining or operation of an underground mine or mines as defined by this act without obtaining a license from the director. These statutes outline the whole procedure. Now, guess when the application was made for the registration that they talk about under 49607? On January 2nd. On January 2nd, 2025. I got used to saying that, 2025. These statutes have been here for a long time. Anybody that's involved in this business needs to know the rules. And they've just they went out as early as October of 2024 and started their process of mining this limestone. What's going to be interesting is how the Director of Conservation handles 49621.
What are you looking at now?
I'm looking at these statutes. I'm on page 131.
Okay.
Of the statutes of this paragraph dealing with the state statutes.
Okay.
131. If I'm reading correctly, it talks there about $1,000 a day fine. And we've been out there wondering what authority they were operating on since October. So I think that's going to be interesting. And then you might say, well, gosh, we just didn't know about that idea that it was going to cost us $1,000 a day. And then in this packet, I direct your attention to page exhibit 4. In fact, it was so important, I think I included it twice, both 4 and 5. Fire Construction was notified of it, all this statute, on June the 14th of 2005. And lo and behold, whoa, they knew then that it was $1,000 a day. And yet, they didn't even apply it for the registration that's required by 607 until January 2nd, 2025. So at this point in time, you know, it's my feeling, in all due respect, you're dealing with people that are kind of used to writing their own rules. And the question is, do you really want to grant them this permit where they're going to tear up our landscape? They on the idea in mind that, hey, we've been leasing and doing this since 1974, and there's nothing of record to notify any kind of adjacent landowner. How was she supposed to know? What about this unethical real estate agent? You know, it's just all smoke and mirrors. That's all it is. So you have the authority. I'm told by Tim that the way this works is that you guys, the commission needs to decide whether or not they want to grant the conditional zoning permit or the permit. And then at that point in time, the state goes ahead and tries to put together make them file the registration in their site plan, how they're going to, their reclamation plan, and it all is shifted to the Division of Conservation down in Topeka. But you can't do that unless you've satisfied all the local rules that are set forth in there. And you'll see when you look at the statute, 49-607(6), it says a statement explaining the authority of the applicant's legal right to operate a mine on the land. There's no lease on file. There's nothing to indicate that Jim and his wife have filed an application to do this mining. And just another thought before I sit down and start hollering at you. We're told, the rumor is, there's a lot of rumors going around, but there's no work going on out there. And it's because Effigy closed them down this past week because they were operating too close to Effigy's rules on their power lines. So, gentlemen, you have a big job here, and that is just to say, hey, no, we don't want to grant the permit. The same way 2 members of the Planning Commission wanted to do this. And there's been this whole concept about, and I'll let the landowner speak to this, but more than once, Mr. Walker said, well, tell me what you want. So we told him what we wanted. And it wasn't at all what was represented to you a little earlier. Check over the next week or two, check with Mr. Poland about how his water is. And he was allegedly, involved in this before it jumped the county line. But there's a lot of reasons why you need to take a hard look at the applicant, who the operator is, the fact that these folks have been telling you that they know all the rules, and yet they don't. Or at least if they know them, they don't want to follow them. Thank you.
Any other comments? Oh. Let the applicant go. No, go ahead. Name and address, please.
I'm Betsy Edwards, and I live at 2394 Bain Road with my husband, Fred Moody, and our 5 kids. I guess I'm probably not real unique in Dickinson County in that our biggest asset's our house. I think most people are probably that way if they own a house. And so we have zoning to protect property. We have zoning ordinances and we have processes. And the processes are to maintain some sort of order and to protect private property. None of the processes have been followed. He started quarrying back this fall, and I kept calling the county and saying, well, he's coming towards our house. What's going on here? And they said, oh, there's no quarry there. There's no quarry there. Well, I hear the beep, 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 and I see the machines moving. So I thought there was. And so then we finally figured out there was a quarry. And he knew he didn't have a permit to operate a quarry, yet he's been operating one since the fall. So it doesn't seem like rules are real important, and the rules are to protect the taxpayers. I think if you look at his application and go through it, it even shows his unwillingness to, follow the rules that are, stated in their own zoning ordinances. He said, I'm not going to do screening. I'm not going to put signs up. There's no traffic that comes by. Well, that's interesting because I see the semis roll out and I see the traffic go by, and there's definitely traffic. I asked him from this fall, I said, I'm worried about our foundation. I'm worried about our water. and I'm worried about our house value. He's known that from the get-go. I think those are all valid concerns for the biggest asset we own. We all know that a rural house without water doesn't have any value. And so I guess my ask is that you protect the people of Dickinson County and the homeowners and deny the CUP, because it's very clear he doesn't want to follow any of the rules. And if he's not following the rules now, and he hasn't followed them, and he knows he's been operating without a permit since October, how will he follow them in the future? He won't, and we're going to end up with a bad well and cloudy water. And I asked him if he'd guarantee our water, and he won't. I asked him to send out a structural engineer. He hasn't. So we don't even have a baseline because he's continued to blast, knowing he doesn't have a permit and knowing he doesn't have a CUP. And I guess I just think that the zoning regulations of Dickinson County and the people of Dickinson County deserve a little more than that.
Well, if I can respond to that, first of all, most of what Mr. Edwards was reciting doesn't apply to us because we are not the ones quarrying. In 2006, when I bought the quarry back from Martin Marietta, I made a contract with Buyer Construction to do the producing, to produce the rock. And so what I am is the leaseholder and the CUP holder, and I don't do any of the quarrying myself. They have a permit to quarry, and they have all the insurance and bonds that's required by the state to operate. They have an MSHA, which is Mine Safety and Health, which is a part of the Department of Health, or what is it? Anyway, as a person, as a company, we are not required to have an operating permit, a quarrying permit. It's the people that are actually doing the quarrying that are required to have the permit, which they've had. They have all every year. You renew it every year. I'm not sure. Did Mr. Tim, did he give you the application that I made and the paperwork that I yeah, you can see in there where he gave me the CUP back in 2020 and the letter from the governor and the exemptions, and that's what we were operating under. I still feel like it was really necessary for us to get a permit on that because we were grandfathered. We started quarrying that property, that farm, not necessarily that quarter, but that farm in 1973. And we have a lease that is registered on his deed that shows that. I have a copy of that lease that shows it's registered here on that property.
Dave, I'm not gonna, I wouldn't keep talking. I would like more, I'd like more of a legal counsel to answer this question. I'm sorry, Mark. I mean, I want to kick the can down the road, but I don't want to vote on something I'm not comfortable on voting on. So my recommendation is we send it back to the planning and zoning and get more information before I make a decision. Well, I won't be making, but, and that's Joe, do you want to go that way?
I'm in agreement with your take on this, Craig, because this would give us time to look at this also. But I think if we take it back to the planning board of zoning, we need to give them some specific direction
Direction is
on what information.
looking for.
Right.
Specifically.
One thing that I guess if I have a complaint is Mr. Hamilton was telling you what the conditions were. I never did get a copy of what those conditions were that were approved by the planning commission.
Okay.
Well, the thing is, those are recommendations.
Yeah, the recommendation says.
The final, these guys will make the final approval.
I guess what I'm more concerned about though is the lack of guidance that I need from legal counsel, because I don't want to break a state statute, or I don't want the commission to make a statute mistake that's going to get us more legal trouble than we're already in.
What's the question?
What legal,
Interpretation.
how are you sending it back to the planning and zoning board? What are the requirements that you are asking
What are you,
for
what information are you looking for?
from
So did
them?
They had that. The
Yeah.
planning commission had that. The planning commission had that.
I mean, I guess the other part
For
is,
the record.
Yes, sir.
The commissioners on that panel that night said, well, they only got the thing when they showed up for the meeting. And they had no real chance to really digest all of the information. And frankly, I still don't have a copy of it, even though I've asked for it. I don't know why these things are.
The applicant only submitted 8 copies. 7 of them went to the planning commission, 3, and I was able, whoever didn't show up at the planning commission, you guys have extra copies that, but no one
I have a copy
requested.
machine. I'm happy to copy anything, you know. But I still don't have anything to copy.
I think if Mr. Edwards would like a copy, he could get it from his daughter.
I
gave her one.
so I don't know. I need some help on this, Tim, as far as for them to go back and review it. And we make sure that they have checked with this, but also it seems like there's questionable on the information of when things were approved and not approved and
What things were approved and not approved?
well, the permitting from the state and the granting and I guess the other part of this, and maybe there's another method to do this, until I could really sit down and read this, I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on it. So I guess the other thing is, can we either table this for 1 week or
Yes.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
Or until planning and zoning meets.
Or do we send it back to the PVC?
You would have to have very specific things that you are specifically looking for. If you're talking about legal counsel, then that would be a Doug question.
So I think what we need to do is to go ahead and have this tabled so we can review this information
And
more
consult
specific
legal counsel.
and consult with legal counsel.
Get it back. I've told them before is tabling it, then if we don't bring it up.
Correct. Within this, you have to have a time frame
Yeah.
when you're going
We'd
to.
have to specifically bring it.
Well, if I may suggest, apparently that one application has been submitted now to the state was dated January the 2nd. Which says when we got word of it. So it seemed to be that we're looking at sometime mid-February to see whether, because they have 30 days to act on, just to see if all the requirements are set forth. And in the meantime, it just seems to me that you gentlemen do have the authority to say no more activity out there until this is all resolved.
This is Randy Haversall. He's with Fire Construction. They're the ones that are actually quarrying, and they're the ones with the permits.
The permit that you're talking about is, first of all, I called the Department of Ag's office and asked them about the standing of it, just trying to verify, because there was a lot of different things being said. And she said, you guys are in good shape. That section, you're permitted, it's
Then
good.
we'll need something in
Did she send you
writing
anything
from
on
the
that
state.
by chance,
Let
Randy?
me finish.
Okay.
So I said, I got to go back and we're going to the commission. I said, I need proof of that. And she said, well, let me look at it. She hawed around a little bit and she said, I still stand by what I said, that this is fine, but it is an old document. It was handwritten. It was filled out by hand. It wasn't on a computer generated. And so I said, well, send me a new one. I'll refill it out and it'll have the specific information that we're looking for right now. And I sent that in, which is what you're referring to. It's just January. And when she got it that day, she said, this looks great. I'll get the director on Monday to sign. And then, of course, we were snowed out on Monday and he signed it either yesterday or the day before, and she sent it back to me. So I got to follow up and give you the signed copy that the director had signed it and has approved that permit, even though the other one that was handwritten in 2006 was still valid. We have an updated one with an updated plan that's specific to that quarter section. And it's all, the state is completely approved everything that we are doing. Our license is up to date. I mean, we haven't missed a beat on any of that. And so you need some fact checking of what's being said. And I can provide the signed document and then the phone, you can call them and verify it yourself as well.
So I guess what I'm asking Tim, what do we need to send you back to do?
Well, what I would say to you is you could recommend, I mean, not recommend, but you can approve on the condition that they meet all state requirements as outlined in the Kansas statutes for reclamation and everything that I basically, and so in other words, the conditions that the planning commission gave, there's some additional conditions I would like to kind of go over with you just to, so if you would, in just a minute, it would be either a well testing, as was done back in 2000 in section 2, to establish a baseline for wells, or update the well study that was submitted that's dated 1996. The other would be another condition of approval would be a road maintenance agreement. Any buffering or landscaping if you feel like that's necessary, and a staff follow up on an annual basis at that site, which is what we've done previously on section 2. So there's additional conditions, like I said, applicant. You can say, my point is the planning commission is recommending the applicant can continue operation until they meet these requirements, but until I get certification from that notification from the state on state letterhead saying that that's been certified and that they're licensed to operate, then you can put a stay on it. That would be another, the option as a condition that would be, you'd have a stay until that documentation is submitted to me.
I still tend, I'm more towards, let's wait till that comes in and then have more opportunity to review this. And
table.
So pretty much table, other than what date to hear from the attorney. And then Mr. Edwards has said it'd be 30 days before we hear a response from the state, but that also gives us time for review if there are additional questions. So I guess the question I have is, do we push it back to the 23rd when we have our reorganization, or the 30th, or as far back as the 6th?
I think the 23rd is awfully quick, and you'll have a new commissioner on board, and he'll need some time to review it as well.
Hear back from the state.
And hear back, yeah. Well, and then have time for Eagle.
February 6th, that's the KAC day at the state capitol.
Right.
That's at 13.
So 13th, we are not having a meeting on February 6th.
Or not?
I understand.
If we go to the KAC
Capitol Day, County Government Day at the Capitol.
we can reset the meeting that week. if needed, but I just,
I would suggest the 13th because I'm out of town on the 6th.
okay.
13th February. For you, Tim, 13th?
February.
February.
Go in someplace where it's cold.
Mexico.
Yeah.
I need to make a clarification.
Okay.
Well,
Yes.
Mr. Walker had said that I had approved him. I basically sent an email stating that he didn't need a conditional use permit during that COVID.
Right.
And I think you said on my staff report that really it's, those types of administrative permits are only good for about a year. And so, once that expired, I didn't, he would have to have abided by the conditional use permit requirement as I explained.
Yeah, we're looking at February 13th of 2025.
Correct.
Those books, yeah.
Yep, right here.
Okay, and 11.
Exactly what.
And,
11.
I know where
and,
I know where Poland live out there.
and then we have this issue of ongoing activity.
Did you want to put a stay on that, on activity? You have the authority to go ahead and put a stay until they get their certification.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
It should be.
Commissioners,
Yes,
do
sir.
you want to put a stay on the activity or do you want to allow that to continue as the question before you?
Can I make a comment?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. How's it going to impact if we put a stay on it?
Well, it'll make
Okay.
a big impact, but one of the things that was stated earlier was that trucks are coming in and out and all of our material sales go out across the river on Old 40. We do not have any sales of material coming out through there.
That's forever then.
That's right. It's in another county. So we don't have that activity. We do have employees that drive out there and we do have mechanics trucks that do drive out there, but they're licensed vehicles. But as far as the
Semis hauling rock out.
yeah, but as far as the bids going forward, I've just not been bidding rock going out of there. And we're clicking through highway lettings and there's a lot of uncertainty and you certainly don't want to bid on work you can't sell.
There isn't any signage, is there? Still don't have any signs though.
That's another subject. Yeah, that's a different subject.
Well,
I know, but I mean, it's getting petty. I mean,
If we need to make a motion that we take this up on February 13th, and I will make that motion.
and I would also suggest that we be able to continue limited work on the property until we hear something definite.
Not to exceed 1,000 foot.
Yeah.
From where they're, okay.
Exactly what the planning and zoning board had put in place.
Well, we're 1,800 feet.
I know, but I'm just saying,
And there's another thing that came up about Rustar shutting us down.
Evergy.
Evergy, what, shutting us down? We met with Evergy out there and got approval to quarry under their lines. I don't know who was getting shut down.
we got a motion.
Have they?
We got,
No, they didn't shut.
Excuse me, gentlemen.
okay, we've got a motion. Guys,
Gentlemen,
we've got a motion to the table here.
All right.
Now, and your recommendation was that they continue operation
Right.
from now to February 13th on that limited basis until we have the information to bring it back.
Make sense to you?
Well,
Oh, and you're not the gentleman's pouring at Myers. Is that satisfactory to you? I mean, I don't want to shut down production for something that's critically needed, but I don't want to also violate somebody's right to have access to their house and, good water and stuff like that.
What this does is it just allows us to quarry, but it doesn't give us any certainty on producing a contract.
I'm not going to do that.
That's where the problem.
Yeah.
so you're actually limiting our ability to stay in business.
We're giving you till 30 days. You can keep doing until we hear from the.
All of our bidding is in the next.
Okay, then we won't do that at all. We'll just take that off the table and we'll cease operations right now. Is that what you want?
No.
Okay.
So I stay with my original motions and I guess it just needs a second.
I'll second it.
I'll response here.
So I just want to be clear, he can keep coming towards our house before we have a water study or a well study.
No, that's not what we're saying.
Well, you said he could come within 1,000 feet, and right now he's like probably about a third of a mile, like 1,800 foot, probably.
Right.
And so you're saying he can keep coming and
Well,
moving forward.
Unless the weather gets bad, they're not going to make that much progress in the next 30 days.
Well, hope not, but I mean,
I'm sorry, that's.
And I hope that you have a good neighbor relationship, even though you're on opposing sides.
Well, I just want the record to reflect that the ultimate imposition of a fine is all subject to the state.
Right.
At this point in time, and any kind of time that you're out there doing work in whatever capacity, that fine, you're violating the state law. Okay?
Who is?
You and your operator.
Okay, we've got a motion. Let's call for a vote. Thank you very much. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
We'll see you on the 13th.
Yeah. Additional item, you had it.
You still have indigent defense.
Oh, yeah.
Contract,
Yeah.
just to sign those.
Yeah, Indigent Defense Council. I'd like to put this other in front of it.
That's fine, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
I would move that we go ahead and sign the 2025 Indigenous Defense contracts that our attorney, County Counsel Doug Thompson has presented to us.
And I'll second that.
Move to second. Any other discussion? Not all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The additional agenda to reschedule the 16th January meeting to the 14th of January at 9:30 work session and regular meeting start at 11.
I would so move that we do that. That's January 14th on a Tuesday.
I'll second that motion. Any other discussion? If not all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Minute
Yes, sir.
before you adjourn.
Okay, 1 minute. Yep.
I'll make I just want to say that, and I should have said it before while everybody's here, for the benefit, that, you know, you guys serve in a capacity that most people don't understand the commitment. And this has been a long meeting and it's unusual, but this isn't the only part of your service.
Yeah.
As you guys know, I'm preaching to the choir, but the public doesn't realize that you are on committees, you go to meetings. This is a 5, 6, 7 day a week job, and we appreciate what you do, especially Craig. I want to say thank you for your service. You apparently didn't learn much in school board, so you came back from. I think the true test of time is if something's better after you've served than it was when you started, and I think it's obvious. And I also want to say thank you to the person we haven't mentioned today, because she puts up with a lot as a spouse.
Right.
And thank you, Vicki, for everything you've gone through. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. We stand adjourned.
It can't, what's that? It can't be